Welcome back to Melodic Memories of LIGHTSMONARCH. I'm Casey, and today we're going to be tackling the album deep dive of my favorite band, Black Veil Brides, their very first album, We Stitch These Wounds, and the 10-year anniversary re-recording titled Re-Stitch These Wounds. They were both released in July, the first one being in 2010, the second being in 2020. And just off the bat, to kind of cover who Black Veil is, they're my favorite band. I adore them. I've known them, their music, for 10 years, as I mentioned in my first episode. If you haven't listened, go listen. Would highly recommend. A little biased. But Black Veil Brides, the band themselves, consists of Andy Bierzak, who's the vocalist. Then there's Jinx, the rhythm guitarist. Jake Pitts, the lead guitarist. Lonnie Eagleton, the bassist. And Cece, Christian Coma, the drummer. Though the bassist and the drummer for We Stitch These Wounds, they were different people. The lineup has changed over the years. Re-Stitch These Wounds has Lonnie and Cece, but We Stitch These Wounds had Ashley Purdy on bass and Sandra Alva on drums. Sandra left, I believe, not soon after the recording of We Stitch These Wounds, just because she didn't like the way the band was going. Like, it wasn't her vibe, she wasn't about it. And Ashley, that's a whole nother bag of worms, but from what I know, they haven't really publicly spoken on it at all. But from what I know, Ashley's out of the band and will never be seen again. In the band, at least. Where he is now, no idea. Last I heard, or last I actually seen, was on Twitter, years ago at this point, that he was a Bitcoin farmer of some sort. Not really sure about that whole world, but, each to their own. Not for me, and I never really cared for him, not gonna lie. Sorry to all the Ashley Purdy lovers out there. I don't know all of the allegations against him. I know that there's some. But enough about him. This isn't about him or that story. But this album here, we've got We Stitch These Wounds, which this era of the band, it's seen them playing in parking lots, literally on milk crates, because they couldn't find literally anywhere to play. No one wanted them. They were, quote-unquote, the most hated band on the planet. In the world. No one liked Black Veil, and they had a really hard time finding a place to play, so they had to bring out milk crates, a stage made of milk crates, and played on it, in a parking lot, for the few fans that showed up. And those fans, the BVB Army, as they are so titled, if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't have made it anywhere. Like, literally the fans carried them to where they are today. And the album itself, for what the era kind of stood for, just being rough, very rough and angsty, and beginnings, a rough beginning. It's really reflected in We Stitch These Wounds itself. It was originally recorded with a very low budget. As I remember hearing from Andy in different interviews, when Re-Stitch These Wounds was coming out, when he was kind of reflecting on the making of the original, just kind of saying, like, his vocals were recorded in a closet. Like, I know it's not unheard of for that to happen, but for an official release on a label, which their label, that was a whole nother story in and of itself, being taken advantage of by record executives. What's new at this point? Like, honestly. But luckily they ended up getting out of that whole contract debacle down the line. But for this record itself, the label didn't care. Their budget was so small. They were just a brand new band at the time, so obviously you can't put too much faith into a new band, or at least the record executives think that you can't, because it's a waste of money. But it really just kind of pushed Black Veil to make amazing music, regardless of the price tag. They still churned out an amazing album that is incredibly angsty, full of themes of betrayal and wrongdoings, just being wronged and becoming stronger, which we will get into here soon. The original We Stitch These Wounds, the album artwork, was created by Richard Villa, who he himself has made quite a few of the Black Veil album artworks throughout the years. I can't remember exactly which ones, but obviously I'll let you know in the album breakdowns to come when we get to it. But it's just him. It is a painting of Andy stitching his face together We Stitch These Wounds, quite literally. And I think it kind of just reflects being silenced and feeling like you're, putting on a facade, that you're not saying what you truly want to say. It's a very nice album artwork to look at and just make you think. It's quick to judge it, obviously, as they were at the time quite judged. But then we go to the Restitch These Wounds album artwork, and itself, it's literally 10 years. Like, if Andy stayed in that spot, in that album artwork, granted the re-recording, he's facing the other way, but bear with me. If you're standing there for that long, literally 10 years, and that art character of Andy actually aged, this might sound weird, but if it actually aged, that's kind of what it is. It's a decaying body. Like, it's a decaying face, still with the needle and thread as he was stitching his wounds. And it's just very symbolic because it touches on, how you can have a dead self. This re-recording might have been their final release, so, if it wasn't for the said lineup change that I talked about earlier with Lonnie replacing Ashley, then really the band would have been over at this point. They were kind of thinking of doing the snake eats its own tail kind of trajectory with their whole career and make it where this 10-year anniversary recording was going to be their last release. Luckily, that didn't happen. We still have Black Veil Brides. At least I'm very happy they didn't break up. I would have cried so hard. Literally, they mean so much to me, so it would have been a huge blow. But luckily, it wasn't the end. And with the album artwork, which was done by Luca Solo Machello. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Beautiful artwork. It just, again, is like the 10-year... It just matches the 10-year anniversary so well. I don't really know the correct words to put it in, but it just symbolizes that. That you age and die. Simple as that, and it's just wicked artwork. Comparing it to the original pays homage to it and makes it its own all the same. But enough of my rambling about that. Back to Black Veil themselves. They are my favorite band, and it is also my 10-year anniversary as a fan, which I did mention in my introductory episode. But for those that didn't hear it or didn't listen, it all started on Omegle. Funny sounding, I know, not a great place to be, but there was this girl, met on Omegle, and she showed me the music video for Perfect Weapon. And though I didn't like it when I first heard it, after a little while, like a week later, it was just ringing in my head, like, what was that band? Who was the band that just was so different, so unique? Had all the makeup, the war paint, the vibe. Something that I never was shown before. Like, I never was exposed to this kind of art. And ended up finding the music video in my YouTube history, and the rest has been history since. Quite literally. I've loved them since, and I'm always excited for whenever they release something new. Since they are my favorite band, I have seen them about 5 times. Living in Canada makes it a little hard to see my favorite bands, as I'm sure some of you listening can relate to that, even if you live in Canada or not. It's hard to get bands to come here. It's hard to get bands to come to other places when it isn't their home country. And the fact that I've seen them 5 times, I'm not going to complain one bit. Every single time they come close, I make sure I go see both shows, because usually they hit up 2 of the big cities that are far away, yes, like one's 7 hours, the other's 4. But being I'm already driving 4 hours, I'm going to drive the extra, 2, or I guess 3 in that case, to go see them again. I'm not going to miss that chance, and I'm sure some people can relate to that. But I got the chance to meet them over video chat in 2020 with the We Stitch These Wounds live stream. They ended up doing a live stream event for the whole album, performing every single song in its entirety on the album live. Good old COVID times, obviously, because that's a thing of its time now. I don't know if any bands are still doing stuff like that, though I think it's a smart practice. As much as I can agree with the bands that were hesitant to do it, which Black Veil was, they didn't know how it would come off without having an actual crowd there to feed off of. But honestly, as a fan, it's cool to just be able to have that intimate moment with them. Like, it's amazing with live music and going to see the show. But in a time where that wasn't possible, it was the best of a bad situation. And I'm glad that I was able to, get tickets for it and, well, virtual tickets for it, which is so strange to kind of like reflect on. But it was cool to finally meet them all. Because there was one other time I met Andy, which I will talk about later in a future episode of these album breakdowns. But meeting the whole band, it was the best that it could happen. And then I went on to meet them a second time during their Trinity of Terror tour. Well, meet is a loose term because that was also just them standing on a stage and us getting a photo, like as a group, in front of them. Which again, making the best out of a bad situation for sure. But after that was the proper introduction time as I got VIP for their tour that they ended up doing with VV. Shout out to him. Don't listen to his music very often, but, respect that he made a collab with Black Veil. Like, completely unexpected when it came out, but I can definitely fuck with Temple of Love. For what I know, granted I don't know the original very well either, by the Sisters of Mercy, but I love Black Veil. I'm very biased, and I thought it was a wicked cover, so props to them. Anyways, to get back on track here, it was a more intimate setting. I got a photo with the band, which I have posted on, I'm sure, some of my socials. But now it's time to talk about their first release, We Stitch These Wounds, and it's, again, 10th anniversary release, Restitch These Wounds. Thinking back on it, I actually remember buying the original, and at the same time, their fourth record, the self-titled, from the local HMV, if anyone remembers what HMV is. And granted, I know that it's still open in certain areas in the world, but in Canada, they all kind of closed down, at least where I'm located. And now I believe it's Sunrise Records. Great place, definitely go check them out for, if you want records. But the HMV, when I went there, it was so many years ago, again, a while back, probably 2015, if I had to think on an actual year. But it was with my dad, and we went to the mall, the local mall, and it all started from there with my first CD being, that I bought myself, being We Stitch These Wounds, and their fourth record, the self-titled. Though it did all start with my dad buying me Wretched and Divine, which, it started my collection of Black Veil music and collecting habits with what I have now, because my collection is kind of big. Just a little flex. But for all the records that I have, it all started with my dad coming home and being like, hey, here's your birthday gift. And it was Black Veil, my first ever album from them. And I still remember it very fondly, going through that front to back. And it was the first album that I ever had the physical CD for, and I got to look at all the album artwork and read along with the songs through that little album booklet. It's something that's taken for granted. Physical media, and just the fact that you can really dive into an album and lose yourself in it. Especially with concept albums like Wretched and Divine. But not only those albums either. You can really dive on in, as some would say, and just enjoy it. Get lost in the world that they are creating, that they're crafting for you to hear and visualize it. Even if there's not a storyline, even if there's not a world behind it, that music itself is the world that they want you to get lost in. And it was the first time I really got to experience that from front to back. And it's something that I will forever enjoy. A memory I'll forever cherish. But I also found the original on transparent gold vinyl over on Discogs back in 2017, near the beginning of my whole record collecting. Because I didn't start collecting records until around then. And now it's grown quite a lot again, but the CDs was where it was at until I was like, well, why would I want to get a record player? And then I heard a record player, and I was like, oh, that's why I want to get a record player. You just kind of got to hear it to really know why. Like, why it's such a craze. Analog format, analog music, that is where it's at. And I don't mean to sound like a complete audiophile. I will say right now I'm not. But I can appreciate vinyl. I love the warmth that it brings, the sound that it has. Oh my god. It's just something that can't be beat with digital. CDs are good and quite close, but it's digital format. Analog just has something that can never be fully replicated, no matter how hard they try. And with We Stitch These Wounds, while it wasn't always my favorite Black Veil record, it was actually my least favorite for quite a while, until it grew on me. Not saying it's a bad album, definitely not. It's just my least favorite. Because I do, it's the way that I kind of have all my things that I love. I don't often dislike the things that I love. I appreciate them all for what they bring. And in saying that, it's more like my least liked, or at least was at the time. I don't know if I have a top list, if you will, made for Black Veil, because they're all really hard to kind of even out and say which is better than the other when I love them all. But for the longest time, it was my least favorite. And as I sat with it through the years, just the rough, angsty kind of vibe, it grew on me. And with the restitch version, I grew to love it a whole lot more. The sound of the restitch version is just where it's so polished. The drums, especially. If you love drums, and I'll say this right now, if you love the sound, the really like tight, just kind of bam of the drum, where it's recorded and produced extremely well, restitch is where it's at. And that is kind of where it leads into what people had wrong with the album, like when it was re-recorded. I remember there being quite a bit of discourse over the fans that Andy's screams just weren't as loud and weren't as good. And the production, it just kind of made the drums and instrumentations extremely loud over Andy's vocals. And, well, I can see where they're coming from completely. Like, no one was wrong in saying that, but it is definitely more of a personal preference. And even with the change, I will say that the restitch version, if one is to go listen to either or, I would say give them both a listen, of course, if you're really, wanting to dive into their catalog. But if you're just wanting to give it a shot after this episode, check out Restitch. I would say that's the easiest to consume, the most modern, where it is the current band lineup, and it's still, for the most part, the same. Like, there are differences, which I'll get into, but Restitch These Wounds is just the one I would recommend to newcomers if they wanted to start where the band started and it not sound so rough as it did. Granted, again, nostalgia is a crazy thing. It's wild for people, and it drives a lot of people's love. But for me, even with the nostalgia, taking off the rose-tinted glasses, I will say Restitch These Wounds I would recommend over it. But if you are a fan and haven't heard We Stitch These Wounds for some reason and have heard only Restitch, go give We Stitch These Wounds a listen. Like, what are you doing? Like, listen to this podcast, of course, but go give both a listen, honestly. So, for Restitch These Wounds, I got it on CD, just as I did the original, and also vinyl, but it was the neon yellow and black merge vinyl, which came out in 2020. I pre-ordered it. It was limited to 300, and I pre-ordered it when the album first launched in June of 2020. I can remember when I worked for TELUS, and I pulled over literally mid-drive while I was working, and because I got a notification on my phone, and I was like, holy fuck, wait, what? Like, I knew it was coming, but, pre-orders, when they drop, they just kind of drop out of nowhere or drop with a song. And this time it just popped up, and I got a Twitter notification, and I lost it. I pulled over instantly, and don't worry, I wasn't texting and driving. I had an Apple Watch, popped up on there. But as soon as I seen it, I was like, hold up. Pulled over quite instantly and pre-ordered it on the spot. No thought needed. Take my money. And never looked back, but I still have the vinyl in my collection and the CD, of course. At the time, I was super excited for it, and I think I had the majority of my Black Veil collection completed, which I do own every Black Veil record on vinyl, which is a rare thing, actually, believe it or not. Their records are extremely hard to find, and I guess it's just because they were all printed once at the time of release. I don't know why they haven't went back, like, give the fans what they want. They've been asking for, especially Wretched and Divine, they've been asking for that one for the longest time to get repressed. Because I think looking on eBay, they're going to run you way over like $200, if not more. I know on Discogs, they're some of my most valued in price of my collection, which is actually crazy to think. But I remember listening to Restitch These Wounds for the first time, and I accidentally had it on shuffle like an idiot. But with the Quick Panic, after the Quick Panic at least, I ended up listening to it in full. And I remember Spotify Wrapped for that year. I believe I had some crazy stat for listening to Perfect Weapon, for being like one of the first 100 listeners of Perfect Weapon. It was really weird to see that. I can't remember if it was in Wrapped or just a notification, as Spotify sometimes does with the artists that are your favorite. But I remember that quite vividly and just freaking out over that. I'm like, hey, my fandom was literally validated. And I don't know, it just made me feel good about that. Regardless though, the first listen was amazing, and the reason why I loved it even more than the original was because of the production. I know that I'm kind of drilling that fact in, but it was produced far better. They actually had a budget this time. Andy actually had a vocal booth this time, and though Jake, produced it himself, which is crazy, the guitarist of the band, he produced it completely himself, and it just made everything sound a lot sharper, and the drums in particular, as I mentioned before, just more intense and crisp, which I do prefer. Granted, my opinion is not correct. It's an opinion. So if you do like We Stitch These Wounds more, don't get me wrong. I love that version too. They both have their own merit, just as, every album does. Every single release they have, and every other band's release. They all have positives and negatives. There's never going to be a perfect album. There will be some that are close. But music is subjective. Art is subjective. And so long as it makes you feel, that's really where it's at. So as I said, I do prefer the re-recording, but the original, I do still love it for the raw, kind of early days sound that it has, because it captures the essence of what the band started with, that spark that they had. And I know the re-recording itself has its own critiques from fans across the board, with the screams being kind of quiet and muffled, and some of the songs being slightly altered. And I think the biggest one that was altered was Mortician's Daughter, which got turned into Overture 3 in the re-recording. There's reasoning behind that, which I will get into, but they kind of reimagined that song in particular. And there's a couple other ones they changed as well. Either way one looks at it, though, it's all up to personal preference, and there's really no wrong or right answer, as the original is very raw and emotional, and the re-recording is refined and powerful, comparatively. They both stand on their own legs. And as Andy said himself, that both of them exist. And the re-recording wasn't meant to override the existence of the original, just to recreate the album to how they always wished it to be, how they always wanted it to sound, with the means and the production that they wished they had when they first started. Again, the budget that they had for the album was minuscule, and the re-recording, they could actually produce and create the album that they originally envisioned. And I think with that, like if someone kind of goes into it knowing that, with being a complete stan of the original, it's another way of looking at it rather than feeling kind of betrayed as they didn't stick to exactly recreating the original sound and the original songs, because some of them are different, which again, we'll get into soon. I'm almost done rambling, I promise. But along with the rest of the band coming into their own and refining their craft, which you can hear on the re-record, Andy himself became a far better singer. His vocals grew over the years that he became sober and stopped smoking and started caring about his life. Because I remember there being a time where he said in an interview, it was either an interview or on Twitter or something, I can't remember exactly what, but he said that he didn't care if he made it past 30. Like, he kind of was content with dying by then, with the way that he was living. And he hit his rock bottom around 2014 or 2015 when they were on the Black Mass tour, and he turned over a new leaf. He realized that he needed to smarten up, and I'm so happy that he came to that realization himself and that he's still around to this day, as he is now older than 30, which I believe he's 33. His birthday is in December 26th. He is almost a Christmas Day baby, but, besides the point, completely besides the point. It's just lovely to see that they were able to capture the original essence, all the same, with their new and refined production and instrumentation. Before we get into the album deep dive itself, if you guys enjoy makeup, the art of makeup, there's a website called Curse Cosmetics, and if you use the code LIGHTSMONARCH, you'll get 10% off anything you purchase. And they do have a Black Veil Brides collaboration, which is why I'm saying all this. Go check it out. It's for their newest release, Bleeders. It blends the kind of vibes of Sweeney Todd and the vibes of Revenge, all of the, it has a palette, and all of the colors themselves have names that are towards Sweeney Todd. And I think it's really cool. Go check it out. Again, use LIGHTSMONARCH at checkout for 10% off. And go give Curse Cosmetics some love. But now, into the breakdown of We Stitch These Wounds and Restitch These Wounds. Track 1, The Outcasts, Call to Arms, and Reborn. This record is for the outcasts. Following are stories of love, life, and never giving in. We are the Black Veil Brides. It's the first song on the record. It's more of an introduction for the album than a song, and an introduction for the band itself. And it's also, we're beginning the album at a point where the original and re-record differ. As the original, which is called The Outcasts Call to Arms, and the re-recording, which is The Outcasts Reborn. The original, it begins with an atmosphere building through the ambiance and vinyl pops before the vocal track comes in. And that vocal track was recorded by Andy's grandfather, Urban Flanders, before he passed in 2012. Now, Andy's grandfather, as a little bit of a backstory, had a huge influence on him, and the importance of having him to start the record off was immense for Andy. He mentioned in Behind the Veil, which was a paid Patreon thing, back in 2020 when Restitch These Wounds came out, he mentioned that his grandfather was a huge influence for him, and that he ended up getting him to record. Like, he gave his mom a script and got him to record it, and through voicemail, of all things, which is amazing. But he was able to capture that, and he wanted to just be able to preserve his grandfather's legacy and what it meant to him. And it's the first taste of Black Veil Brides you get. If you start with their album, it opens with that and his voice, and I think it's just, I don't know, as someone that has lost loved ones and wished that I could hear their voice again, I think that's an amazing thing. And if you ever get the chance, anyone listening gets the chance to record their loved ones before they pass, do it. You won't really know until they're gone how empty a hole it leaves. But to move past that, his voice was just forever imprinted in time. It's a lovely sentiment, and it fits the vibe of the album perfectly. The original has an old creepy sound with the popping of dust on vinyl and sounding as if it had been recorded over very old equipment, with the distortion of his voice and the incoming instruments. Though when we get to Restitch These Wounds, it again opens with that ambiance, but instead of the old sounding vinyl popping noise, it has bass rattling in the distance, building the intensity as it goes into the same vocal track, ending this time with what feels like the perfect transition. So both tracks build the atmosphere of the record and what's to come beautifully, and it continues to build up to the title track, being track 2, We Stitch These Wounds. It begins with the massive strike of drums, guitar, and choir. It gives a feeling of intensity, and when you hear the roar before the verse, it really sets in the anger and betrayal you feel in the lyrics of the first verse. You kissed the lips of evil. 2 months, it's all the same. I begged for this man's approval. Pray to die in vain. It gives a sense of manipulation, of feeling the need to serve and live up to someone's expectations of us, even when it doesn't ring true with our own individuality and forces one to act out a facade. The pre-chorus continues with faint screams towards the end. Sit down with thoughts alone now. With blood these lyrics came. Your words, they eat right through me. Death could hear my shame. After which one is left alone, when the facade inevitably crumbles, you sit alone with the words of the one that left. Their words just echoing in your mind of now broken promises. And what you held on to and fought so hard for vanished, but left etched in your soul. It builds into this chorus with an uplifting reprieve and bittersweet lyrics. Also, I can't help but feel as if it's a moment Andy is truly speaking directly to the listener as he sings, "The tears we've cried, this love has died. You're by yourself with me tonight. It's what we hide with every lie, and stitch these wounds with me tonight." Where us as listeners, we can relate to the feeling he sings of. All that we hide away, and the lies we live, and promises made to us, or ones we've made to ourselves, that turn to be nothing but lies in the end. Stitching these so-called wounds together in unity for all who've been betrayed, as they've so far conveyed in the lyrics. All before bringing the intensity up again with a melody of shredding guitars, intense drums, with pounding bass and another building scream. I think of it each time I touch you, or every time I hear its name. These walls will never crumble. Here's our cause to blame. It solidifies the illusion that has been left shattered and the lies that have been unveiled. As one has been cheated in life, this insinuating by a partner, and being unable to shake the betrayal of a loved and trusted one, which I'm sure we can all relate to. The uncrumbling internal walls, gratified with the lies and dishonesty, one can only blame themselves, both as a whole. As the pre-chorus and chorus repeats, we fall into the post-chorus, cementing the betrayal felt with the agonizing screams echoing and repeating, "Liar, liar, liar." As the song goes into its breakdown, beginning with both guitars and then into its solo, you get your first taste of the talent of Jake's lead guitar, being front and center, complemented perfectly by the intense kicking drum beat and support of the bass and rhythm guitar. Going back into the chorus being repeated, the vocal delivery complements the melody and tone, with the release felt after the song solo, then being repeated, with another go of the chorus and ending with an incredibly small glimmer of hope to letting go, and hopefully finality to the torment, with a slight change to the post-chorus as Andy roars, "Liar, liar, liar, say goodbye." Track 3, Beautiful Remains. This song begins with a sharp guitar riff till we're hit hard by the drums as the rest of the band follows in. We're then hit with smashing cymbals and a quick guitar riff that spirals right into verse 1. "We gather here to sing for you the words you've written. Each bloodshot beauty still reigns true from violent crashes." More feelings of betrayal being shown as the band here sings a song of disloyalty, hidden truths, and what seems to be addiction. As lies spread, the truth of being addicted to the substance is undeniable and quickly noticed. As the cycle continues, the inevitable crash comes and it's impossible to ignore. The song then goes into the pre-chorus. "Gently rest your weary head. What you live for now is dead. Good night. Goodbye. A soul surrender." This all being heavily screamed by Andy, it's intensified by the chugging guitars and whoa-ohs of the band members. Something that becomes a bit of a Black Veil special, a staple if you will, alongside the wicked solos that they always have throughout their whole discography. The lyrics themselves feel angry and fed up through the intense screams. It's the message of all the aspirations their partner had, all the promises they had made, unraveled by the destruction they chose to surrender to. The classic saying, "You made your bed, sleep in it." The final woes lead directly into the chorus. "This love will set you free from thoughts of yesterday. Now death has come to claim your beautiful remains." This false love they become enveloped in within their addiction sets all worries and cares free, for better or for worse. Whereas also the love felt between the lyricist and this person can set them free, their addiction leaves a beautiful but hollow shell that can only end with being claimed by death, looming ever closer. The song's title itself being screamed and ending the chorus into verse 2. "I'll strike the match to set you off and watch you glisten. Our love in time, a single loss. You never listen." The feeling of betrayal being ever present, so much so that one becomes fed up and will gladly light the fuse just to sit back and watch as they burn. Never feeling listened to, as you beg and plead to communicate, but that was a time past, as now that bridge has long been burned, with them being the last glistening embers. As Andy repeats the pre-chorus, which is once again screamed, into the chorus, also being repeated, yet ended with a prolonged scream of the song's title being followed by another slick, angsty guitar riff, which then leads into the bridge. Here in this room is what we must do. Do. We must do. Do. We must. Being screamed as the guitars chug behind in this scratchy harmony, it's as if he's being possessed. The evil feelings Andy has been pushing back against come in full force, convinced he's the one to put an end to the false lover and their lies. As the final growl then leads into the song's solo, which has guitars wailing and drums crashing, it leaves a solemn sense of possible reflection before the real bit of the solo starts, with Jake upping the intensity and going into a ghostly rhythm, building and weaving something wicked. It leaves us with an image of the one burning at the stake as Andy lets out a blood-curdling scream, backed only by drums and the riff heard throughout the song. It gives more dead space to hear the full intensity of the demonic roar unleashed, until the crashing drums and spiraling guitars lead us back into the chorus, being repeated twice with "Your Beautiful Remains" being screamed both times. It ends with a solemn chug, leaving finality of the deed now done. Track 4, Children Surrender. Beginning with a slight build-up in ambience, throwing us right into the sharp guitar riff paired perfectly with the accompanying drum beat. A small instrumental piece crafted in perfect unison, exploding into an abrupt chugging stop to welcome in the first verse. We're born into the night, like children of the damned. Our pain will shine a light to those who understand. Lots of open space begins the song to let the vocals truly shine until the ting of hi-hats and the open chord brings a flurry of intensity to continue into the main riff of the chorus. Andy sings directly to us as the listener, relating the band to us as we're united through this pain we've endured and continue to battle. As though we're all born damned by God themselves, the pain endured through life's perils creates a beacon for all that are broken, together becoming whole. The whole verse ends with smashing drums in quick succession and more wildly screaming guitars directly into the pre-chorus. Born into the night, pain will shine a light. Being screamed by Andy with intensity, it reinforces that we're one and the same, and that our pain shines through the darkness as a symbol that unifies us to know we aren't alone. Which honestly, I will say, he was probably thinking of the bat symbol. Not gonna lie, Andy loves Batman, so high suspicion. But anyways, it's with a small but significant pause that it leads directly into the chorus. Sink your teeth into forever. Sunlight burns. Children surrender. With more of the band's iconic whoa-ohs, it adds to the effect, especially in a live setting, whereas us, the audience members, become a part of the song, chanting along as Andy sings lyrics that encourage to never let go and set your sights on the horizons, to come out of the darkness of night that has been enveloping you. Through the pain you fight for your survival, proving that only children surrender. You can overcome this and any obstacle life may throw in your way. You're grown, you're strong, you are you, and you're not alone. This song progresses straight into verse 2. An exercise of life to cut beneath our hands. Like souls who miss their plight, will bleed along the sands. Andy sings to us, saying even through feeling as though we've been damned and our destinies predetermined, as our souls themselves feel unworthy and already passed by, even through the worthlessness felt, we'll bleed together. It's with our individual struggles and turmoil to leave them along the sand, as they will soon wash away with the tide in time. The instruments then slide back into the pre-chorus. Being screamed yet again by Andy, enticing the audience to scream along in unison. With burning passion, through the connection we as listeners feel, it builds into the song's chorus, as we again chant along as Andy chants the battle cry itself. It's followed by a deep inhale and heavy roar, matched and preceded by an intense shred-heavy solo, giving the feeling as we're all gathering to the beacon set off through our pain. The inner struggles and turmoil left on the shore is being washed away as Andy calmly sings the bridge, "Sink your teeth into forever," sang in an almost ghostly tone as the song nears its conclusion to insinuate, even as it ends, continue your fight and embrace forever. The tinging of cymbals give us reprieve, and the feeling of hope followed by more woes, and to begin the song's final chorus. With a final riff of instrumentation, the song ends, but the fight rages on, left reminded that we're not alone in any of our battles. Track 5, Perfect Weapon. To preface, the original music video for this song, the thing that started it all for me, as I mentioned earlier, as a fan, and as an avid music lover, it actually started with Outkast called Arms, before the song's iconic opening scream, of course. Whereas the original album had that opening the album, the music video for it actually had that. So a little thing to kind of note, it doesn't really change much, it still suits the song perfectly. But if you go to check out the music video itself, you'll notice what I'm saying. And I think personally, it was wicked for them to do. Anyways, there's a difference in the song's solo between the two versions, where demonic laughing happens in the original, and an enhanced solo introduced in Restitch that challenged Jake more and freshened things up. It was a risky thing to do in a song that means so much to the people that love it, as I do myself, but he walked the line so well that it fit. Like, he walked the line just perfectly enough to have it fit oh so well. The song opens up blasting the eardrums instantly with a smash of the cymbals, and, of course, the iconic roar held by Andy for about 10 seconds, which, you know, little me seeing that for the first time, crazy. Like, absolutely crazy. It caught me off guard so much, and it stands on its own as one of the most iconic moments of the band. If it's your first time listening to it, it just catches you completely off guard, which I guess now it won't because I kind of spoiled that. Sorry in advance about that. But the iconic roar itself, it just gives a glimpse of the agony to be followed in the song itself. A perfect intro to a fan favorite song, for a justified reason. After the intoxicating intro riff plays twice in succession, the instruments quiet as we reach the first verse. Awake at night, you focus on everyone who's hurt you. Then write a list of targets, your violent lack of virtue. The lyrics resonate with the open chord and drum beat, talking about the people we have in our lives that live life without care of hurting others, the bullies we face, be it by breaking our trust time and time again, or being prosecuted by their judgment for who we are. The ones we remember, and the vendettas held etched with the lack of moral concern. As we live consumed in revenge and drenched in pain, it proceeds to cement itself through the demanding and pleading growls and roars into the song's pre-chorus. Leave us alone. You're on your own. Go. The words we all scream when we're being picked on and belittled, quite literally. The song then turns to Andy screaming at us, as an audience, to remember, even with the solitude we feel trapped in, to embrace it, rather than fight it. Embrace it and go. The song then transitions into the chorus. We are breathing while you're sleeping. Go. And leave us alone. The liar's cheating. Our hearts beating. Go. And now you're on your own. With feelings of abandonment and betrayal, knowing even with the things we're unable to change in others, we still exist, and to live unheard and unseen is a disservice to oneself. While these liars sleep peacefully in the deceitful web they've weaved, we're battling through the sleepless torments of the night. Even on our own, we must fight. A chanted go echoes behind Andy as he yells the same. A war cry that us as listeners can chant along to as well, forming unity within one's own solidarity. We're then thrown directly into the second verse. Here's to your perfect weapon. Crack bones with blind aggression. Like birds whose wings are broken, you live without direction. Beginning with a line referencing the song's title, it gives the title itself definition to say one's perfect weapon is used without remorse, or as said in the first verse, lack of virtue, tying in thematically with the song itself. The aggression with lack of aim felt, and even sometimes self-inflicted, when we travel aimlessly through life without goals, as they've been blinded in anguish, never given chance to take flight, completely directionless, almost as if we're all misguided ghosts. We then return to the post-chorus, screamed again and solidifying the plea as it continues to the chorus itself, which is ended with a building growl into a second go, which is ended with a building growl into a roared go, building the intensity further, etched in the bridge. Go, 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 and now you're on your own. Go, go, and leave us alone. Which in turn is again screamed with a prolonged roar at the end into the song's solo, which is the place where the difference comes in hand between the two versions. Again, the original has the demonic kind of laughing sound that they added, and the re-recording just has a harder solo, one that he actually enjoys performing now that the original has kind of lost its flair for him. Just imagine being in Jake's shoes and you're playing the song most nights, throughout the whole last 10 years. I think you might want to switch it up a little bit, and, I think he did a great job. The solo then builds and breaks into a complete shredding and drum blasts, while behind you, you hear the iconic riff that flows through the song, giving a familiarity, but also feeling the intensity of the aforementioned pleas. We then get the instrumental build back into its chorus, that ends with intense blasting instrumentals that come to an abrupt, crashing end. Track 6, Knives and Pens. This song itself is the first single from the band, and was the first music video that they ever released, back in I think 2009. Coming out a year prior to the album itself, which came out in 2010, it even had different vocals compared to the album counterpart, alongside a whole completely different cast of band members from the original lineup, with I believe only Andy and Sandra being present throughout the whole thing. The guitarist was someone they hired, I believe, and they ended up making the album. They had the actual band that went on to tour, except for Sandra, because again, she left before the actual touring cycle. But the music video itself was filmed when Andy first made it to Hollywood. When he first got there, he met Patrick Fogarty, who became really good friends with him and directed the music video, and the rest was history. After he uploaded it to MySpace. Anyone remember that? Like, a long, long time ago. Unfortunately, I myself never got to experience it. I know a lot about it, and I feel like back in the MySpace days, one of these songs, or at least one of the songs Black Veil have since released, would have been my profile song, which I heard Instagram, for some reason, is making that a thing now. Which will be kind of interesting, I guess, for the music lovers. I'm kind of excited, so. But besides the point, the song itself and the music video itself was recorded on a small budget, just as the album was. And Andy has since stated that he remembers writing this song with his friend Chance while snacking on pizza rolls while he lived at home far before the band ever actually formed. On top of all of that, it's one of the most well-known songs for Black Veil Brides, currently even sitting at number 2 on their Spotify Top 5 per this recording. There's also an acoustic version found originally on the Hot Topic exclusive CDs for We Stitch These Wounds, which luckily is not lost to time as some songs can be, as it's found on streaming services for the time being. Same song at its core, but far slower and free of screamed vocals. I'd highly recommend, as it's bleeding with incredible emotion. Definitely go check it out, especially if you preferred the original over Restitch These Wounds. because it just has more of that raw, angsty emotion that they perfectly capture. The song itself begins with anticipation of something larger, which is then interrupted with the sounds of drums crashing through, supported by something known as the metalcore riff, as it's featured in many songs of the time, albeit with slight differences across tracks. Very slight, like some are more different than others, but though Knives and Pens truly does get very close when watching over a compilation, it really feels like it can't be a coincidence. All the same, after the intro instrumentals methodically harmonize, we're hit with the song's first verse. Alone at last we can sit and fight, and I've lost all faith in this blurring light. Not missing a beat and picking up right where we left off with Perfect Weapon, finally left alone as per our pleas, we can now focus and fight the battle of inner turmoil as the sunlight burns brightly, which itself is a connection directly to children's surrender. We feel like giving up, but with the pre-chorus where we hear Andy roar, "Stay right here, we can change our plight, storming through this despite what's right," affirming to us to never give up, to stay in the fight as long as we have the power to rewrite our story as the battle rages on, paving the path to the life we deserve. With the transition made by the wailing instrumentals, we then hit the chorus. One final fight for this tonight. With knives and pens, we made our plight. A battle cry sent straight to us, instilling strength and unity to fight this final fight. Pushing through the darkness of the night, as with these perfect weapons, and lists of names that have hurt us, we carve out our own destiny. With an anthemic feel to it all, enhanced by the whoa-oh-ohs, echoing between the chorus, we get treated to a burst of instruments, stuttering into verse 2. Lay your heart down, the end's in sight. Conscience begs for you to do what's right. Andy sings directly to us once again, saying, lay all you have and all you are down on the line. You've almost made it through this plight. Even deep down you know and hear the echoes of your conscience begging to push through this final fight. You've the strength to win this. We're then snapped into the song's second pre-chorus. Every day it's still the same dull knife. Stab it through and justify your pride. Again, angrily screamed by Andy, with complete validation, this time insinuating that even with our damage, we must push on through and prove that all our effort hasn't been for naught. Justify your life by making it through this. It's followed with another stab at the song's chorus, which this time is extended from the prior chorus. One final fight for this tonight. With knives and pens we made our plight. And I can't go on without your love. You lost, you never held on. We tried our best. Turn out the light. Turn out the light. With lyrics connecting back to the songs earlier in the album, the love that was lost to addiction, the one he had watched burn, they lost to themselves, and even with the burning flame they had made together before all of this, even with all the efforts made, it's over. They lost. It's time to retreat and beg the light to cease its burning. With more echoed whoa-oh-ohs, as we, as an audience, are wailing along to, the sadness and angst felt through Andy's stories of loss and agonized screams of prayer, with a wild roar of the word go, and chugging guitar as we get to the song's solo, slowly building into a passionate flurry of guitar and drums, ending with an uplift in hope, heightened by the raise in pitch before going back into the extended chorus, as we're reminded again to continue fighting, even as the song fades away and the remorse left and felt. Even in the anguish, one can recover even with the pain. Blood-curdling screams into the final chugs of the instruments. The song then ends. Track 7, The Mortician's Daughter, Overture 3. This song is the break, quote-unquote, in the album from the heavy angst to a more naive and soft approach. Still angsty, of course, but more raw and vulnerable, honestly. It also has the largest difference between the two albums, whereas the version on the original has lyrics and the version on the re-record is a purely instrumental track composed by Jinx himself, as he is even known from time to time to do movie scores, just like the Fall Out Boy's very own Patrick Stump now does. It's wicked to see artists just kind of expand, and whenever an artist that I love does so, I always try to make sure to make note and go check it out if it's a project, that I'd actually enjoy. And even if it's something that I might think I won't, I'll go check it out. Except for Patrick Stump's, Spider Kids? He did something for Marvel, but it was like a kids Spider-Man program, which I'm not super interested in watching. That one I don't think I'll ever get to. But anyways, to start with the re-recorded version, it's a pure instrumental. It's a sprawling venture of heartache and beauty. It's a song that, upon the first listen, it strikes you with an overwhelming emotion, sometimes even drawing out tears. As I remember when it released, Juliet Simms ended up talking about the song itself and how when she first heard it, it made her cry. Juliet Simms being Andy's wife, for those that don't know. It made her cry. The raw emotion of it, just pure. Which, honestly, I do believe Jinx did the track justice in creating something new while keeping the song's original melody. Yet it's clear to understand why some fans were upset with the change. I get it. I personally didn't mind at all, though it would have been obvious to just re-record the song as it is, or as it was, rather. But Andy has said he no longer wants to sing it, and doesn't relate to the song as it's about a lover in his far and distant past, which I think us as listeners, us as fans, can respect. He's a person at the end of the day, and even he has feelings, which is very much apparent just by listening to this album. I can appreciate what the band turned this track into, and I highly recommend giving both versions a chance, as they both shine in their own right. From the orchestral violins and choirs to the acoustic guitars and violin, dubbed with raw, longing vocals of Andy, both can be appreciated and praised in their own right. Enough rambling though, let's get into the original's lyrics, starting with verse 1. I open my lungs, dear. I sing this song at funerals, no rush. These lyrics heard 1,000 times, just plush. A baby boy you've held so tightly, this pain it visits almost nightly. Missing hotel beds, I feel your touch. The song begins with acoustic guitars, creating a soft and sadness-filled melody before Andy starts singing to his loved one. Words that have been said time and time again. Even if cliché, it's the full truth, even unto the day he draws his final breath, and his existence ceases. For he's remembered by the words of his love echoed, though there's no rush, as to live every moment and not miss a second. As this is directly sung from his perspective as an artist, going onto the road to chase the dream of being an artist, he feels lonely, and every night without their touch. And innocence as a child just longs to be held. He longs for their presence all the same, and remembers their touch as he drifts into slumber. Verse 2. I will await, dear, a patience of eternity, my crush. A universal still, no rust. No dust will ever grow on this frame. 1,000,000 years, and I will say your name. I love you more than I can ever scream. With violin entering the mix of acoustic guitar, we have Andy saying, our love will never fade, to go on forever, beyond the cosmos and never ending. Our love is eternal. The love felt is one even words will never fully capture. What can only be described as true love, it then transitions into the chorus. We booked our flight those years ago. I said I loved you as I left you. Regrets still haunt my hollow head, but I promised that I will see you again. He reminisces on the time that they met and chased after their love until the inevitable yet momentarily end of their time together. A regret he holds, even if out of his control, as life continues forever on. A promise etched in one another's heart that they will cross paths again and have their bubble together once again. We then go into verse 3. I sit here and smile, dear. I smile because I think of you, and I blush. These bleeding hollow dials, this fuss, A fuss is made of miles and travels. Roadways are but stones and gravel. A bleeding heart can conquer every crutch. Stating the happiness he feels with even just the thought of his lover, how it can bring a physical smile to his face, as if the love itself makes the world brighter forevermore. Even though the hardships of being stuck out on the road, chasing dreams is not easy, and it's taxing on the time one has for each other. It's nothing that their love and longing hearts can't persevere, and it can overcome any obstacle. After a small instrumental fill, we get another dose of the song's chorus. We booked our flight those years ago. You said you loved me as you left me. Regrets still haunt your saddened head, but I promised you that I will see you. We booked our flight those years ago. I said I loved you as I left you. Regrets no longer in my head. I promised you, and now I'm home again. Again. I'm home again. Again. I'm home again. This time extended, repeating the again and home again line as if it's almost unbelievable. Something dreamlike, because looking back on love throughout life, you make those promises. Even if they are far out there, you're longing for that to come true, and when it actually does, you're bewildered and baffled and like, this is actually happening? I only dreamed of this. Literally a dream come true. It ends the song with the lovers coming back to each other after what felt like an eternity, being able to feel whole within each other's company once again. Track 8, All Your Hate. The album immediately jumps back into the loudness preceded by Mortician's Daughter, and begins with guitars wailing and drums crashing before shredding us into the first verse. Use my breath for every line you'll take. When you are lonely, words are holy. A deadly grip on lies, sing to those blood-red skies. Hail Mary, whisper softly. Right from the start, the song is keeping up with the themes of addiction, abuse, and manipulation, saying to use me to save yourself, a moment of weakness, and in your loneliest moments, the hollow lies seem divine. You grasp to the thought of them and the empty promises they truly hold, yet you're blinded as you pray unto a false god with shame. Followed instantly with the pre-chorus. What you became, some things never change, and so we. It starts with singing, which then breaks into the last half being screamed by Andy, as if to convey the anguish felt, essentially continuing to say, the dreaded cycle continues and begins anew, never wavering as though it's etched in stone. Without missing a beat, the chorus begins. We learn from all your hate. We are lost in your mistakes. Play our hymn for the brand new day. We burn. We learned. Saying the hatred you've shown has long been learned from, as we find ourselves without direction in the fog created from your mistakes. May a new day dawn, and it be triumphant, as we've grown and become confident within ourselves, with every battle fought, and the scars that were left, we've learned from it all. The song has a quick instrumental break to bridge into verse 2. Here's to your martyr, watch her morals bend. An empty story, we grow hungry. To reclaim the notes we lend, you cannot win. When saints are glory, I'll die slowly. Now being introspective and speaking directly to someone and their falsities as what makes one human slowly is lost. And with each passing cycle, morals continue being bent. With the support and love we're shown, this war cry we sing, there's no way we'll lose. When people pure of heart choose to be twisted and unvirtuous is when I'll fade, as if to say, with confidence, that's never going to happen. Followed for a second time with the pre-chorus, and inevitably back into the chorus itself, which this time ends with a muted effect broken by the shattering drums and stuttering guitar with anger roared in the song's bridge. We learn from all your hate, you suffering from all your hate. You can feel the anger and betrayal felt through the rugged vocal display, as if to say the choices were made all by you and all by your hate. As if to say again, You made your bed, sleep in it. Quickly followed by, in classic Black Veil fashion, a shred-heavy wicked solo, adding intensity to the song as a whole, as the guitar itself screams as if mimicking the anger felt and the cycle that continues. The solo ends with Andy screaming, "From all your hate," which is directly connected to the song's chorus, which is reinforced and ends in an anguished scream, leaving with us as listeners the lesson that even through the deepest hatred from an influence in life, we can rise above it and grow from it. We are strong. Track 9, Heaven's Calling. This song begins with a sprawling guitar and drum solo that settles into the first verse. I am the heartache, you built by your deception. A blind leap of faith, despair for passing seasons. It's again more feelings of betrayal and more emphasis on lies, saying, I am what you created. Through all your deceit and ignorance, the pain and suffering you caused, there's no hope for the future to come. It's separated by a small instrumental fill. We then get to the chorus. Sink in anger, fountains forming, spills like thunder to what we're holding. Sleep forever now, my darling. I won't dwell on heaven's calling. This chorus, I'll say right now, is one of my favorite parts of this album. I love especially when listening with headphones, as you really get the true effect of the background vocals given, just as though an actual choir of angels are echoing behind Andy as he sings his hymn. As if to say, you enveloped yourself in the hatred, as it shakes the very foundation of what we've wanted for so long, yet you choose otherwise, as blinded both of us have become. Rest, innocent soul. I'm not going to suffer the same fate, as this is my story, and you aren't a part of it. It's a very large-scale chorus with matching lyrics, and heavenly devilish vibe. The song hits a small solo, yet again, into the second verse. Drive into the stake, secrets of his compassion. A perfect escape, like hell you'll list your reasons. With excuse after excuse, how he cared and how he showed it, you'll tell me why, and then the list of reasons as though what you've done has merit and warrants forgiveness? Fuck no. Like, I'm sure we can all relate to that throughout life and throughout our experiences. Like, fuck no, you're not getting forgiven for what you've done. Now, I'm one that is all for forgiveness. But if you've truly been wronged, that path is burnt. That bridge is burnt. That path is gone. I'm probably better off just letting go, as we think, and most often are correct. Without skipping a beat, though, the chorus hits. It begins, and with knowing the adultery that seems to be at play, it adds to the thunder-like spill that parts the two lovers. The angelic choir turns sharply into a piercingly screamed bridge. When angels run, my anchor dropped. When angels run, my anchor dropped on ground. Saying we're left stuck as to fight the battle and never to retreat, never to go back to them and to never listen to the beckoning call. Even as others would retreat, I stand tall, left with overall feelings of facing the enemy head on and never straying, more impactful even with being screamed. After the solo, which is built upon the other small solos spread throughout, it absolutely shreds and feels as though you're facing that oncoming enemy as if it was you yourself who set your own anchor, representing also that in moments we have to remain strong within ourselves and set that anchor, which transitions into the chorus for the final time, thematically driving the next track. Track 10, Never Give In. First off, Andy has stated himself that this song was written in the shortest time and put together just to have another song on the record, and yet they still managed to make a straightforward and empowering track. Obviously, the structure is different in this song compared to the rest of the record's songs. Instead of going like chorus, verse, I believe it goes verse, verse, chorus. I love it personally. I think it's a nice fresh take. It kind of shakes up the album a bit, but it was a song that was written essentially last minute. The re-recording is where the song fully shines, as it was finally given the time the original never got. so the two share distinct differences in the production, tone, and overall sound. Same song at its core, all the same, but the re-record really pushed it over the top and solidifies it for me. Especially with the added backing track to Andy's bass vocals to sound almost possessed and demonic, something that caught me off guard completely. As I said, it's noticed most with headphones, just as with Heaven's Calling's chorus. Also, the guitar and build-up at the beginning and found throughout the track sounds almost like a digital synth kind of rainfall, and I love it. I just love the way its resonance and the drums accompanying it adds a devilishly wicked overtone to the track. Anyways, verse 1. A reason, a victim, a shining beacon in the sky. You yearn for what's missing, the power hidden in the night. In direct reference to children's surrender that came before, the pain will shine a light as everyone has their reason if they've been victimized, even when being internally victimized by oneself. You miss what once was, the missing piece of yourself, as though it's shining in the night sky, powerless as it's shrouded in darkness, longing for days filled with light. Verse 2. An angel, a demon. The parts you played on lonesome nights, the damage inflicted, the pain and lust they leave behind. Saying the different masks we wear, putting on a show as the persona we desire to portray leaves lies and false truths of who you truly are, to where one feels lost with the roles they've made themselves play. For good or evil, the roles we make ourselves play, they leave behind a mark. Also, it can be in reference to the different acts played by the lyricist's assumed lover, referenced from track to track, and how the damage is done, in any way of looking at it. With the help of chiming electric guitars, we reach the chorus. Never give in, never back down, never give in. Again, very simple and a straightforward message, as per the song itself, reinforcing the message of never giving in, with the chants of hey echoing throughout, just inducing the feelings of unity in this fight. Never give up, no matter how hard things may seem, or how close the darkness is to snuffing out your light. Don't let yourself become an empty husk. Never give in, and never back down. Verse 3. We're soldiers in season. We can bring change before we die. The tales of their beatings, to feel what lies beneath our eyes. The song insinuates us as warriors in this grand war within ourselves, that together as we cry, we can win and change our fate before it's inevitably too late. Even with the trauma and baggage we all carry, always remembered yet never by choice, drug alongside us as if to remind us of the war we fight, as it sparks with every glance. We then hit an extended chorus. Never give in, never back down. Never give in, never back down. When your life feels lost, never give in. As the chorus goes from Andy singing to his screams with the band backing him up, vocally chanting the words, fight against all odds and never back down, they're chanting the answers that they hope they can come to achieve with the fiery passion they ensue. A powerful solo follows the final chant that begins chugging along into a fierce spiraling shred of guitar with backing drums as it sets into the final chorus. And as it repeats, the song comes to an end, leaving the listener hopeful and ready to live for themselves and their right. All these emotions and thoughts interrupted by an intense drum fill to kick-start track 11, Sweet Blasphemy. This track in particular was the lead single of Restitch These Wounds, and what a moment to behold it was. It was our first real taste of the re-record, and it smashed expectations. With the intense drums and feelings of pure unity this song brings, it was the perfect single choice, as this release itself was for the band themselves and the devoted BVB army that follows. I even remember playing it almost religiously when it dropped back in 2020, to the point I'm sure my roommate knew the song word for word, but you know, at least he knows a good song now. But back to the song itself, with the iconic guitar riff following the drum fill, we begin verse 1. Through sadness you have taught us to be one with the crowd. Unveil the sacred order, hymns of falling down. You told the greatest stories of love and bleeding crowns. but to the sick and hungry, you cannot be found. A commentary of social structures as we become silenced amongst the crowd through being fed sadness as a form of control. But as we embrace this failure in our differences, what makes us truly unique, separating us from those thought as holy and righteous, these things that are kept from the less fortunate and are almost completely unattainable. We then go into the song's first pre-chorus. We are young and we are strong. Through strength and self we become something more than they can be. I raise my heart and say. A unifying, powerful message to us listeners, bringing the outcasts and everyone ever mistreated, thought less of, or otherwise wrongfully accused together. Through our inner strength, we become stronger and more than they could ever be as we show our faults, worn as badges, proud to show the acceptance and true power of accepting that we're human and we're all imperfect. Next, we dive into the song's introspective chorus. That I won't believe this lie. I know there's something more inside. When darkness is all you see, this is our sweet blasphemy. Heard throughout this chorus, echoing behind Andy are whoa-ohs, adding to the powerful effect within these beautiful and powerful lyrics. This lie, we're told, the way we're forced to live, silencing our true selves and locking them away from the world behind these personas we're forced to show, it mustn't be believed. There's something more hidden inside all of us, absolutely beautiful things to be found. When your back is against the wall and you're feeling hopeless, this is what empowers us and drives us to reach the true goal of inner peace and to live truthfully with our differences to those that oppose. Then with a quick shredding of guitars making its transition, we're hit with verse 2. Silence the crooked holy, unchain the tied and bound. No time for allegory, one true reigning sound. Unite the lonely morning, a simple servant now. We are the only glory, hear us screaming loud. With our sweet blasphemy, we will silence the ones that preach and feel more righteous and virtuous than us. Set the ones wrongfully accused free and join us, the outcast and disenfranchised, the ones feeling lost and alone. This is the time you've held on for, and we shall all scream out for exactly who we feel we truly are, even if hidden behind the concerning darkness. One must remember that they are strong and are the ones, we are the ones, that will win this fight, as the song gives us a shortened pre-chorus. We are young and we are strong. I raise my heart and say. Cutting out the end for a much snappier transition back into the chorus, which is done oh so well, and gets followed up by the song's massive solo, which gets interluded by soft chimes and fuzzy guitar alongside the spoken prayer of the bridge. We are young and we are strong. Through strength and self we become something more than they can be. This is our sweet blasphemy. Essentially being the same as the first verse, but instead to end in saying, all of this is our own path, our strength, and our sweet blasphemy. In live settings, as captured in their live concert movie, The Alive and Burning, from 2015, I believe, Andy says, I want you to say a little prayer with me now, okay? Are you ready? Listen. Before going into the bridge, and it instills the fire, the light to hold on. If you haven't seen it live in any form, I highly recommend a quick YouTube search of Sweet Blasphemy, Alive and Burning, to get a real idea of the raw emotion and passion shown, as I can only do the song so much justice, but I've got so much love for this one. This song itself means a lot to me, and that part of the song is what made me fall in love with it. Anyways, we then hear the chorus 2 more times, with the last time having won't and darkness lengthened in Andy's vocal performance, matching melodies, a perfect end to go into the true ending of the album itself, the final track, track 12, Carolyn. This song is a song rooted in loss and suffering, written in a time where Jake Pitts, the guitarist, was dealing with the loss of his mother Carolyn, and the song itself is an honor to her memory. This song is the final track on the album, and the final one that has been changed more drastically from the original counterpart, With the original, we had the song end with it fading out with a chorus, whereas Restitch has a feeling of finality to it, with a proper ending and closing of the album. Both of them stand on their own right, and one of my favorite memories of this song, I'd have to say, would be thinking back to the 10-year anniversary live stream that I mentioned earlier in this episode. Andy ended the show with his eyes locked with the camera, locked with us, singing You Aren't Alone, as the song fades and they leave the stage. It was just a moment that seems to be imprinted into my mind. But before we get to the end of the song, we must start with verse 1. Those times in life we learn to try, with one intention, of learning how and when we'll die, but we can't listen. I wish to God I'd known that I didn't stand a chance of looking back and knowing why, or pain of circumstance. All these beautifully crafted lyrics of loss and realization of the regret now felt with having the loved one lost, and feeling how life truly changes on a dime without warning, while we're all blinded with learning how we'll fail and what our purpose is, we miss on the chance to appreciate what we do have before we lose it to the vicious cycle of life. A heavy first verse that was preceded with a very soft, atmospheric opening that has acoustic guitars driving the song, creating a sad and somber setting with a sense of longing and loneliness. The electric guitar chimes in and sings its song, building the emotion felt with the lyrics, all heard with the backing vocals echoing behind Andy to create a beautiful harmony, and brings home the introspection felt as though it's your own thoughts echoing in your head, as some, if not lots of us, can relate to dealing with a heavy subject such as death and loss. A theme felt throughout this album, and throughout all those themes, we are reminded by the words of the chorus, "You're not alone, we'll brave this storm." Followed with a descending guitar riff, we get stagnant whispers of the solemn guitar felt at a distance, reflecting as one would feel the same if dealt this situation, but the storm can be fought, as sang in verse 2. So here's my song I wrote in time, when it was needed. Through pain of heart or loss of mind, your burden's lifted. You aren't alone, just know that I can't save our hearts tonight. Started quite literally with Andy talking directly to us, telling us this song was written in a time of need and we aren't ever alone. Even if he can't literally save us from this torment and this aching sadness through the hole left within you, you can get through this. As no matter what, you're strong, and this song itself can be fuel to even give you that little extra push to stick through the pain, as there is still life left to live. And even if nothing will ever be the same, you can continue on and heal within time. A reason I find music to be so powerful, as it can literally give someone the strength, or more so help someone find the strength within themselves to push past any hurdle that they may be feeling internally. As a literal release, music is just so beautiful. We then get hit with a slightly extended chorus saying, "You're not alone, we'll brave this storm, and face today, you're not alone," which goes into a rich solo, filled with wailing guitar and smashing drums, building into the song's final chorus. "You're not alone, we'll brave this storm, and face today, you're not alone, you're not alone, we'll brave this storm," which is drowned out and repeated in the original, whereas the re-recording, it fades and transitions into the song's outro, as Andy sings, cemented in time and forever reminding the listener, you're not alone. That was the album, an angsty, emotionally fueled album, honestly, but it's just about our individual battles supported through this band and song of being unified. This band and song means a lot to me, and I can imagine it has reached many fans out there as well. And with that, we reach the end of We Stitch These Wounds and Restitch These Wounds, an angsty, emotionally fueled album, and honestly, I love them both. Again, a huge Black Veil fan, as I know is no surprise at this point, as I probably rambled on about this for almost 2 hours. It's an album that deals with a lot of heavy subjects and empowers the listener to know that you're not going to be alone through this. Anything that comes your way, you're strong, and you should never give up and you should never give in. It's a beautiful album if you give it a listen. I would highly recommend it, obviously. But there are two to listen to. So as I said, both exist, though I would love to hear which is your preferred version. Or if you haven't heard this record before, with either versions, or even of the band itself, I'd obviously recommend them. And be sure to reach out to me on socials or email at LIGHTSMONARCH, all the same, on any platform to let me know. Same goes for suggestions to better the show, or even recommendations for future episodes. Give me your thoughts, give me your ideas, I want to hear them, and let me know how you interpreted this album, because I'm sure it's different than I did. Next time, though, in the album deep dive, we'll cover their second record, Set the World on Fire, which I do personally love. Couldn't tell you where I rank it, as I said, I don't really have a ranking. But with that, I'll leave you with a poem that I was inspired to write from listening to this record. Pain, anguish, disdain, vanquished, left to burn in the solar flame, as the war forever rages on, outlived by eternal shame, longing for hope to spawn. Internal flames burning, inspiration strikes, together forever learning, throughout the darkest nights. Hand in hand, all problems washed away, we will stand together in this fray. Hopefully you enjoyed my poem and the album and the podcast itself. Thank you so much for listening to Melodic Memories of LIGHTSMONARCH and discovering the music within.